All right, Trevor here, Thrival One. Pretty excited to share with you guys a little bit about our CTV, which is our cross-train vehicle. We've had a lot of questions. How we make this work, how do we take a snowmobile and make it drive in the summer? And the honest truth, or the most accurate answer would be, this is how we do it. It's late at night. Sometimes we stay till the early hours in the morning like many of you do. Jack and Tyler have just left and we've made some changes. We're excited. We're going to run Vegas to Reno, or attempt it again. And this is the best machine we've had. It's been a lot of trial and error, but with that, we've been able to come up with a pretty great setup. I think the most important thing I can address right now is the first question that we always get asked, and that is, how do we keep it cool? And kind of smart, I always tell people, well, it's liquid cooled. Well, yeah, I know that. Well, the more accurate answer is yes, it's liquid cooled, but it runs a radiator just like a four-wheeler your Razor does. It does get complicated though. Typically they're covered, and so I know sometimes people don't see it or they don't notice it, but this is the radiator, and right now with the panels off, you can see it. This is one that we've built. We built the tanks by hand so we could get it to fit in a nice fit in the hood, which you'll get to see later. But the real trick of this was figuring out what it would take to cool this. If I could show you a pile of every radiator we've tried, it would probably be embarrassing more than impressive. But some of the things we have tried is we've tried putting it on the back. And there's two main problems that came with that. The first one was really surprising. It actually has to do with the amount of leverage and G-force that exists on the back of that sled. When it's going over bumps, especially for a long period of time, it has a lot of kickback there. And anybody that's kept a lunch on the back of their snowmobile, or maybe even a gas can tell you just how complicated this can get. In our case, it actually caused two things. One was that it would slowly damage and wear out the radiator. That wasn't a severe problem. The other one is the fan would actually move under the pressure, and eventually it would explode and wipe out the radiator and the fan, ruining the fun. The other one that was an issue that we didn't see going into it was actually air damming. We do run a fan on these, but some may know this, but fans actually don't go full speed. And when I say full speed, I mean highway speeds. Even the very best fans out there can only move a limited amount of air, which means they work great at idle and low speeds, but high speed, at some point, you need that wind pressure to come through. And we built some cool ways to pick up that air, but what we didn't know is the air drafting around the driver would cavitate. And we actually, if you can believe this, several years ago, we put a GoPro and yarns and tested it. And after a certain mile an hour, those yarns would fall down. Not even the fan could overcome the cavity that was coming around the driver. So that no longer goes back there. It doesn't mean that it's not a good idea. If you need an abundance of cooling because of the size of motor or horsepower, that would be an option. But for us, this was an adequate size radiator for this particular motor. This motor is an 800. It is a Polaris by make, although it's kind of a homemade thing. It's one that Jack and Tyler and myself and Corey, we brained it together. The cylinders on it are a fuel injected cylinder. We have plugged off those fuel injection ports. It runs carburetors that are actually kind of they're called an IntelliJet carburetor. The modern carbs are running different theories for adjusting for elevation and air pressure. This is running that form by Thunder Products. It's actually called IntelliJet, and we're quite pleased with it. It does a good job of monitoring those air pressure changes up to a certain level, and we've been really happy with it. You may ask why go to the carbureted. Just a quick answer to that. There are some limitations that come with fuel injection that we wanted to avoid, and this allowed us that freedom, and we're very pleased with how it's performing. So that's what this motor is. To do that, this radiator holds about 1.5 times the actual volume or fluid volume that the Yamaha Rhino does. So if that helps to understand what kind of volume it takes, that's what we're using. The fan is one that's built by Spall. This is one of the complications that come with cooling this as well. Not only did we not want to keep it on the back, but on the front, which can be very tricky. The snowmobile creates a lot of heat up there from the pipes and the motor, so we had to get around that issue. Fit is obviously a tough part on this. We had to get it up in the air where it can hit and take in some of that pressure that we talked about. And then we had to find a fan that could produce the pressure or the pull that we wanted. In this particular case, this motor or this ignition system is from the Snowcross race sled, the 600R. It actually has a very limited power that comes from its stator. And so because of that, it was very tricky, but we had to find a fan that would provide enough pull on less amperage than we had to offer. So anyway, that's a little bit about how it cools. It is a radiator. Took some trial and error to figure out where to place it, how big to make it, which fan to run, what was the adequate power that it could pull. And when you get all of those things put together, we also vent the hood and the belly pan heavily to try and also evacuate as much of that heat as possible. Otherwise, it doesn't matter how much fluid we have or how much we're cooling it, it will convect the heat and it will even heat the radiator itself. So those are all issues you have to look into. Once you get that magic line up, they run. Just like your four-wheeler or anything else does. So looking forward to Vegas to Reno. I hope you guys will kind of hang in there with us and watch. I'm going to show you some more things about how we make this thing go. But for now, this is how we cool it. Have a good night.